We'd love to tell you what this podcast is about, but the truth is, we don't know. The CW Pod, at home on Iowa Everywhere. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Iowa Everywhere.
Channel Seed, seedsmanship at work.
All right, guys, special live edition here on Friday, the 5th of May of the Chris Williams podcast. Of course, I'm Chris Williams. We're presented, as always, by our friends at Circa Resort and Casino. And it is a big Derby day, the Kentucky Oaks today. And you guys know me. I love my sports betting. And I know a lot of you are probably wanting to bet on the Kentucky Derby, don't know how to do it. We're trying to educate you today. So I brought in a good buddy of mine who's nuts about this stuff. He's insane about this stuff. His name is Josh Fisher. You knew him from the radio show back in the day. He was on with me all the time talking hockey and horse racing. And we want to do a little bit of like some picks and stuff because I've gotten more into this race with the 3 ABA horses than I ever have a horse race, than any other horse race combined. Like my entire life, I'm more into this one. And it's also, I think, some really interesting stuff going on down there in your home state of Kentucky. And I also want to do a kind of overview on how to bet horse racing. So how are you, my friend? NHL playoffs?
Really excited. You know what? I think you and I have had this conversation a bazillion times. To me, this is the best time of the year. As all my sports that I am a huge fan of, with the exception of football, are kind of like coming to the forefront. I get, March Madness. I love it. I love that. I know you do too. You get towards late March and then you're starting you got the Derby prep races taking place. Everybody's trying to get into the playoffs in hockey and, you're down to the wire. And then all of a sudden you get NHL playoff hockey, which has been fantastic. And here we are. It's Derby week, first Saturday in May. Happy Cinco de Mayo as well. I know it's early. Maybe we should have had a margarita ready.
I'm heading to Senior Tequila's at 11:30 to start drinking.
That's
just
impressive.
Being honest.
Then
I'm going to go out to Prairie Meadows for the Oaks. That's my day.
I think that's a good idea.
That's my day.
Excited for this race. I mean, I just feel like I can go a lot of different directions. I mean, the mind game is what I call it, has already it's been going on for like a week. Once you get to the week of, folks like myself really start to get excited because, ponies are in the stables. There's buzz on the backside of the track. You're hearing, little things. And I have heard a few things as of this morning. I know you and I were already talking. Skinner is the most recent scratch. There's just horses scratched left and right.
He was one of my long shots. That was one of my long shots.
And not a bad one. I mean, Closer had a great race at the Santa Anita and was charging up on the backside on Practical Move and Mandarin Hero in that race in Santa Anita. And I thought looked pretty impressive. But and I had a good friend of mine that was a big fan of that horse and said he's going to hit the board. He's not hitting the board now. He's hitting showers.
Let's start there. All these scratches, and it's actually been a really tragic week at Churchill. I mean, 4 deaths.
Yeah.
I've been reading a lot of stuff about this, and it's just unheard of. Like the tragedy. I don't know another word to put it for these horses. What the hell is going on?
I honestly have
we've
no
never
idea.
seen anything like this in the history of the sport.
Well, I mean, not until recently, right? We had that run at Santa Anita where horses were going left and right, remember? And there was questions about the turf and stuff like this. It's my understanding that some of these horses, it hasn't been like a turf issue. It's been other medical stuff. But I'm wondering how much of that is. Huh?
Is it fluky?
I think a little bit, but I mean, you got to remember, I mean, they race all week. There's hundreds of horses there, right? It's just like having 100 people in the room. Somebody's going to be sick. The chances of somebody not being 100% in a room of 100 is pretty likely, right?
So my wife's a veterinarian, and we've been very much keeping track on the status because we wanted Cyclone to get into the race, Cyclone Mischief.
Oh, you got
the third ABA horse, but you don't want horses to like die, right? Like, I mean, so when I explained to her yesterday, I was like, I think Cyclone's getting in the field, and she goes, why? I go, he has a fever, or this other. She goes, well, that's not good.
Practical Move had a fever, so he was out.
Because point being exactly what you're saying, like you're right. It's like people. If you put them all in barracks, which is kind of like what these stables are, like germ spread and stuff like that. So
They're all
I don't know.
from different places too, right? You got
Yeah.
horses from overseas. You got the East Coast horses from like New York and all the Kentucky breds, and then you got the California crew coming from the West Coast, the Florida groups. You got a lot of horses coming from a lot of different areas.
So it's a situation like, I've got like my Veasan betting guide that I printed off last night, and it's kind of junk now.
Yeah, I was
half the
doing
field's
some
gone.
research last night, and it's funny. Like, give you a little hindsight and back into my strategy, and talking to my uncle who has been to over 50 derbies. He lives in Louisville.
Yeah, give us your background, because this isn't like a hobby for you. This is in your blood.
Well, I mean, I went to school at the University of Kentucky, so like while I'm at school, Keeneland's open in the fall. It's open in spring, and it's really tempting to not go to class after noon when you could go to the track and it's beautiful. And it kind of started that way. I mean, you live in Kentucky, it's hard not to be a part of it. It's like the Kentucky basketball. It's just like it's ingrained in your blood. It's what Kentucky does. It's part of being in Kentucky. It's when the state gets to take center stage. But being in the Commonwealth and being around it all the time, it's hard when you're a student at UK not to drive 70 miles west for a huge party in the infield at the Derby. So obviously, I've been to the infield when I was a student there. And then I've also been on the track, on the rail, on the first turn. My uncle has a box. Fortunate enough for that. He's been to over 50 derbies, which is crazy. He's lived in Louisville pretty much his entire adult life. And, he's owned horses. He's got an owner's pass. So he goes on the backside of the track. He's been there all week. And so, that's kind of where it started. It's my family
awesome.
Growing up in Cincinnati. Like, every time we got around to Derby, I mean, this was back in the day when you'd call people on a regular house telephone, back in the early 80s. And I remember we'd be calling my uncle early in the morning, trying to catch him before you go to the track to tell him who you wanted him to place your bet for, right? You'd always be like, all right, you pick a horse. I'll throw $2 down on that horse for you to win or whatever you want. So that's kind of where it started. And, so it's always been around my family in a sense that we've always watched it. It's always been kind of a tradition. It's a tradition I want my sons to learn and be a part of. I would love to take them one day and share that with them. But it's hard not to get around it. My senior year, I got elected to go to this national media thing that was actually at Churchill Downs, and sat and talked to Kenny Mayne about horse racing,
Nice.
the day before the Oaks, and was there for Oaks Days. It's just an amazing experience. But it never gets old. The art of looking at the racing form, figuring out who's who, trying to see like, okay, this
Trying
is
to find the edge.
horse. This is going to be your stalker horse. This is going to be your late closer. And you're looking at the form to see who does what. But the other thing with that form that you always want to look at is what type of race was it? Was it, Josh Fisher and Chris Williams against Cyclone Mischief? Well, glad Cyclone Mischief won, but what was his competition? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like you're at such a high stakes right now that these are all grade 1 horses. This is one of the best grade 1 stakes period every year. So this is the best of the best of the best. The 20 horse, I believe, was one of the Continuar. That horse has been scratched. We all talked about Practical Move earlier, which is a bummer because I really like that horse. If you watch the Santa Anita Derby,
Yeah, that was a real threat
really
to win the
good
thing.
horse. Continuar, that was a trainer that said he didn't feel that his horse was conditioned well enough. Also, you're talking about a horse that comes from overseas. You always wonder about jet lag and adjusting to, how much time you need to bring a pony over to let it adjust from time frame and different atmosphere. Obviously, you're going from a smaller stable to one that stretches for miles, that has hundreds of horses in it. You know what I mean? It's just, and you go out on the track and you've got that grandstand, 150,000 people. I mean, that's got to be crazy stimulation for a horse, especially
you don't know how they're going to react.
all amped up. So, you never know how a horse is going to react, which, one of the things I got this week from my uncle, and I can jump into some of this, was, I kind of was talking to him about verifying the 2 horse. Baffert horse, right? Of course, right? Used to be. But, sired by Justify. Everybody knows Justify had a great run. So the bloodlines are there. But, when we talk about these grade 1, grade 2 races, like how did he do against the competition? Well, he lost a tap at Trice in the Bluegrass, didn't win the Rebel, which is a grade 2. So speed ratings are kind of there and it's tempting. The big story I heard is that he's bucked off his training jockey this week a few times, and he's just a little unpredictable. And if you look at his finishes, it's like second one race, fourth one race, first, sixth. He's kind of like all over the map. You're trying to look for some consistency. And so my uncle and I always try to find a top 7, right? You got to narrow the field. And sometimes the easiest way to do that is start with horses that you're like, okay, I'm not going to play this horse. And that's just a decision that you're going to make, just like the decision you're going to make to play a horse. All that goes into it. So I've kind of got like what I feel is my top 7. It's rotated around this week and actually in the last few days with all the changes, because I really liked Practical Move. Really liked that horse. Getting scratched for a fever threw me off on, what I was going to do for a super trifecta. He obviously would have been a player in that. When I say super trifecta, for those that are,
let's stop real quick here, Fish, because I want to get into your picks. I want to do that, and I want to give you some of the horses I like too.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I want to explain to people how to bet on horse racing, because it's very intimidating, even for a guy like me who has been around it the last 10 years. I've been around it a lot, frankly, but I haven't bet it a ton. It's very intimidating, and I'm a sports bettor. I bet on hundreds of games a year, okay? But when I go to a horse race, I see a win, I see place, I see show, I see exacta, trifecta, superfecta, box, key. There's a lot to take in here. So let's say you're going out to Prairie Meadows and you're going to take in the races tomorrow.
Okay.
Casual sports bettor here who wants to learn more about horse racing, because I think part of the problem of your sport, my friend, and I had this talk with Jason Luch on the podcast earlier this week. So, like, the gambling thing, I think, could take horse racing to a level this country has never seen. I truly believe that. But I think it's too complicated. I don't think people understand it. In a football game, I'm betting 7.5. I'm getting 7.5, or I'm giving it. I'm betting the over/under. This is very complicated. I think we need to find a way to simplify it for people who want to get into horse racing, but they go there and they're just like, you know what? I'll just go play blackjack instead, right? Like, that's
never a bad idea. I do that too. I'll jump in on both hands. So,
what would you for fun?
Simple stuff.
Let's explain these things to people.
Okay, so let's just
super easy.
Let's just get rid of the myth that you have to play big money. Like, everybody's like, oh, I got to bet. The fun thing that I like about, unfortunately, the Derby doesn't allow you to do it, but when you get into these exotics, and when I say exotics, I'm talking exactas, tries, and supers. We'll get into those. I'll explain those. But, you can play those at a quarter a bet or a 10 center. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So let's just start simple. Win, place, show. You can bet a horse for any of those. Okay, so that's 3. Siri's listening in on our conversation, by the way.
It's all right. Hey, Siri.
Nobody
What's
ever
up,
does.
girl? What up, girl?
Win, place, or show. So let's just start with one horse. Let's just talk Angel of Empire, because I think we both like that horse.
That's my favorite horse.
Yeah, I like the closer aspect of it.
Won the Arkansas Derby, won its last time out. Feels like it's peaking at the right time.
Yeah,
elite trainer,
good ratings. I mean, there's a lot of
Brad Cox
right there. So let's just use this horse as an example.
Okay.
Someone could say, and keep it simple. You don't have to be like, $100 on Angel of Empire to win. That's, to me, a waste of $100. You're just doing one bet there. You're going to have a lot more fun if you play with it. So you could be like, I'll bet $2 for Angel of Empire to win. Now, that's not like an awesome bet. Let's say it's 10-1 or whatever, right? You'll win a little bit of money. I think part of the aspect of going to the track is hanging around and just having a little bit of skin in every race. And you could just go to the paddock, watch some ponies, pick 2 or 3 out that you like. I'm of the variety of, I mean, I've got a top 7 right now, but I like to have a top 5 and try to narrow it down. It gets tough because you start talking to other people. And, I talked to Chris Williams. He's like, gosh, I love Angel of Empire. And I talked to my buddy Larry, and he's like, Mage. I love Mage. And it's just, you start hearing all these different opinions.
Everybody's got an opinion.
Yeah. So just
2 Phils is the one that is kind of the trendy pick right now that all all the sharps are kind of leaning on two fills.
Yeah,
Feels
and
like.
again, Two Phils is had one grade 1 race. He won the Jeff Ruby Stakes, had a great speed rating in that one, but it was a grade 3 race, and I don't think any other Derby contenders were in that. He was in the Risen Star, which Angel of Empire was, and so was Sun Thunder, which are both closers. So that tells me that Two Phils, who finished third, and I watched the race, he stayed up towards the front. On the back half, I think he started at 5th on the first turn, but it looks like 3rd and 2nd, and he finished 3rd. So he couldn't hold that speed down the line. So I literally have concerns about his distance, regardless of speed. And I don't think he's played or raced a lot of good horses. And when he hasn't shown the capability to beat them.
Okay. Let's identify these bets, and then we'll get into, because you and I could talk about these horses for 2 hours.
I know it's crazy.
Win is simple.
Place or show $2. You could say, I want this. Easy. Is an easy bet.
This is what everybody understands, right?
$6 bet. You could say, I want to play Angel of Empire to win, place, or show, W, P, or S. Okay, is what those are on the ticket, right?
Yep.
So what that means is that is actually 3 bets. You're betting $2 that Angel of Empire would win. You're betting $2 that Angel of Empire would finish in 2nd, and you're betting $2 that Angel of Empire could finish in 3rd. Now, if Angel of Empire finishes 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, that bet's going to win regardless. Now, if he goes to 2nd, the odds don't pay out as much, but that's why I like to play trifectas and supers. We'll get into that. So
yes.
Now that you get the win, place, or show, that's 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, okay? And now that you know that you could play one horse for all 3, now we can start getting into what would be an exacta. So let's say we want 2 horses, and we think that Angel of Empire and Cyclone Mischief are going to finish 1-2. Those are you're just picking the 2 horses that you think are going to finish 1-2. Now, when they say box, this is a mistake that cost me like $1,700 10 years ago, and I'm still ticked at myself for it. God, I want to say it was like the 2014 Derby when it was my first Derby when I was living in Iowa, and I had the super, which is all 4 horses, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I didn't box them.
Now, so boxing means they can finish in any order, right?
It doesn't matter the order. You're going to pay more for that bet because, again, you're paying for that horse to finish 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. So
you're paying for each of the bets.
Correct.
But it doesn't matter what position they finish in.
Correct.
Got it. So we would recommend boxing.
But if you don't box them, like I
then
did,
it has to be exact.
It has to be exact order. Now, it pays a little bit more. But like I missed out on $1,700 on like a $2 super because I didn't box them, and I wanted to pay $24 instead of $48. I was trying to stretch. I try to do my bets within $50 to $60, and I try to stretch that as much as I can. So I like to dabble and do a bunch of different plays to kind of get into everything.
Okay, so that's good. So when we're recommending you go up and you want to play a trifecta, we think you're better off boxing than you are not. It costs you a little more, but it's going to give you a lot more options to win.
Absolutely.
Because that's the difference. The actual lingo is box and key. Am I correct?
I don't use key. I just say box.
Okay, but key is when you're saying like, no, I've got Cyclone Mischief winning, Angel of Empire 2nd, and Jace's Road 3rd.
Oh, yeah, you're on point on that one. That's not a box. That is straight. I think key is like right on the money.
Key is like basically like a perfecta, right?
Yeah. You got to be you pick 1, 2, and 3, and if they don't finish 1, 2, and 3,
correct,
you lose.
So we're saying for our beginners, the majority of our listeners who are trying to help you understand this, we think it's better off for you to box it.
Absolutely.
Every time.
Absolutely.
Matt's a regular watcher of our shows on YouTube. He's watching right now. And he asked Josh, is boxing similar to round robins in sports betting?
I don't believe so. I think, boxing again. So if it's a trifecta, again, you're placing 3 bets on one horse and you're doing 3 horses. So it's 9 bets.
So if you do $2 a piece, it's 9 times 2.
Yes.
So it's an $18 bet. It's not just one $2 bet.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to say, I'll pay $2 for those horses to go 1, 2, 3, then that's a $2 bet. But they got to be 1, 2, 3.
Got it. So, anything else we need to know about actually because there's other stuff. I mean, you can do like the multi-race wagers and stuff like that. We're not going to get into all that.
Yeah, those are
today.
like pick 4s, pick 3s, pick 6s. I mean, those have huge payouts. I don't know who's got time to read through that many races and get that lucky because, I mean, let's face it, there is a little bit of luck to all this. It's like anything when it comes to winning a championship, right? You need breaks.
Yeah.
You see Rich Strike take off last year at 80-1 shot. But when you watch the overhead of that race, the horse that wins the Derby usually has a perfect journey for that specific horse. Things open at the right time, the holes, the breaks. There's a Forte and Mandarin Hero, I believe, are really good stalkers. Okay. They're not going to bust out to the lead. And those are the horses that I think you need to look out for is the ones that bust out to the lead, the speed horses. They usually die out on the back half of that race and can't sustain it. Something like a 2 fills, I think, in a verifying. You'll see those guys get to the front early and probably not be able to sustain it. If they do, good for them. Their stats indicate that they can't. But like Forte, Mandarin Hero, they will sit between 5th and 8th and just kind of coast with the pack. And they'll wait until they get to about that far turn. And that's when you watch them start to kind of creep to the outside, look for their little breaks of where they can go. And at the same time, Angel of Empire probably sitting a couple horses back, waiting on that kick to come up later. So those are where you're looking out for. I think in order to hit what I call a super, which I always like to try to pick.
Yeah, explain the super to me.
A super is just, it's 4 horses instead of 3. So you're trying to get the top 4. 1, 2, 3.
So we want to box the super.
Absolutely. A $2 super would be $48.
So, but again, you have to have all 4 horses that seems really difficult.
That's the one I like to play, but the payout is usually sometimes those payouts are like $600 on a dollar, and you made a $2 bet. That's where you get these big payouts at $1,200.
That's where you get like the life-changing money if you're betting $50.
That's where you get the one where you get taxed.
Yeah, and that's what you're going for here.
I remember a couple years ago, it was when my wife and I had just started dating. We went out to Prairie Meadows to watch the Derby, and it was when I hit that super out there, and it was like $634 is what I ended up winning. And it was a $48 bet. And I was like, well, this stinks because if you take off the $48 from that, I'm under 600. But since I was over 600, I had to go. It's nice when you go to cash your ticket and they, oh, sorry, sir, you have to go to a different window. And you're like, why? You want some money.
Yeah.
Okay. But I remember watching that race, and this is where I go into closers, like the 14 horse Angel of Empire or the 15 horse Forte, who I think is a little bit more of a stalker, kicks a little bit earlier. But like, you're always looking for that late kicker. Angel of Empire is a great late kicker. Is he going to win? I don't know, but he's very likely, in my opinion, to make that top 4. So will I play him in a super box? Damn right I will. I think he's going to finish in the top 4. I think Forte is going to finish in the top 4. That's the 15 horse. I like Mandarin Hero that came in. I don't like the post. So would I be like, do I like that horse to win in the 22 slot? No, but he's a heck of a stalker. And he showed that in a race against Practical Move, the 10 horse at the Santa Anita. So I like him to hit the board. So what is that? 14, 15, 22. And for a super, I probably need one more. I'm leaning towards the 5 horse, Tapit Trice.
I like that horse a lot.
I like him a lot too. I loved his race at the Bluegrass. And then
he would be that horse, and I'm very biased with this. I want to be, to our listeners, like Angel's my horse.
I get it.
But after that, I think Tapit Trice would be my lean. I don't ever like going with the pure favorite like Forte. It just feels like value wise, it's not. I would put that definitely. I would put Forte definitely in a trifecta or something like that. But I love this Tapit Trice horse. I mean, you talked about what it did against Verifying. I think that I like my thing, and I don't know enough about this compared to you. I like the horses that are peaking at the right time.
Well, yeah, I mean, you it's a great point because you talk about the horses that, it's kind of like when you're talking about teams that go and win championships.
Yes.
You're liking the basketball team that's playing really good going into their conference tournaments, and
that's Angel.
February.
Angel's last time out won a Grade 1 race. Like I love Angel right now. I feel like Tapit Trice is in the same deal. I also like, and you and I have differing opinions on this pony, is Disarm.
Yeah.
It is a long shot. I think that only in the sense that if you're doing like a super, every race this horse has ever been in its entire career, it's finished on the board. Now, you would say, well, who has it been racing against? Well, it got enough points to get into the Derby. So, and it's got an elite jockey. Like, there's a lot, in my opinion, to like about Disarm. I really like Skinner, and then
I know.
Scratched.
I like
Skinner
that
was my long shot. That was my long shot play.
Yeah, no, I was a fan of Skinner as well, and I think I was telling you, I had a buddy of mine that was just hell bent on Skinner being on the board, and I have another buddy. I used to talk about the Wood Memorial a lot, and now I feel like I'm, you haven't seen a winner from the Wood Memorial in probably over 20 years, I think, but you've seen a lot of winners coming from the Florida Derby lately, in my mind. And so I've kind of looked at that one a little bit more carefully. You had a horse like Mage in that one that my buddy said had a great closing speed on that one, and basically claimed that if that race had gone, a little bit longer, and let's look, the Florida Derby is 1.1 miles. The Derby, Kentucky Derby, is 1.25 miles. So just a little bit longer, that Mage was tracking down Forte.
Really?
But then I went back and watched it, and honestly, Forte made a really good push to hold him off at the end. And when you go look at Forte's races, 4 of his last 5, his buyer ratings have been over 100. Okay. Like, there's no
what
other.
What does that mean to an idiot?
So they have like
these
buyer
rating?
ratings that they do for horses based on how they're, based on running and time. And they can do buyer ratings based on like what part of the race. So maybe like in the first part, the horse was rated at a 90. Maybe on the backstretch, if it's a late kicker or whatever, it goes up to like a 103, but it's like kind of like what that sustained rating is. And Florida Derby was 100, Fountain of Youth 103. The BCE Juvenile, another Grade 1, and I mean he's the Breeders' Cup champion. Mm-hmm. I mean he is a decorated horse. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that he's a stud. I would play him in an exacta because I don't think he's going to finish any less than second. And I really think he's going to win. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's something like Forte, Mandarin Hero, and Angel of Empire with a 4th horse. And I mean, when you're looking at those current odds, and you got a 2-1 favorite, big deal. But then you've got a 10-1, you've got a 37-1.
Insight. I think that Cyclo Mischief has something to get on the board. I don't
actually. You know what? You can't
like
see my
Cyclo
notes.
Mischief.
I don't have a lot of notes here, but it says 21 could hit the board.
Yeah.
And watching some of those races, that horse has had some good races where it's been right in there with a bunch of horses that are in this Derby, and he's been neck and neck with them.
Yeah, he's thought of, I think nationally, from what I've read, is kind of an underachiever based off of his sire and whatnot. Iron Mischief, I think, was its name.
Yeah, but that's Bloodlines to Harlan's Holiday. That's pretty good horse.
My point being, he's been so close in these near losses. I mean, you're talking split seconds could make a difference between Cyclone Mischief. What is he, like 30-1 right now, 25-1, to being a 10-1 type horse?
Well, remember I was talking about ratings.
Yeah.
And he ran the Florida Derby and the Fountain of Youth against Forte, against Mage, and finished 3rd in the Florida Derby. I said Forte was like a 102 rating. Cyclo Mischief, was a 97. He's right behind him.
Yeah, he's right there.
And a 97 in the Fountain of Youth. So what that horse has shown me is it is racing against good, really good Derby quality horses, and he's hanging with them. So that tells me, again, you can play him in any combination. You want to hear some crazy bets that you could do?
Yeah, I do. I just know that the Jason and the Abba group felt like if they could sneak Cyclone in, he had as good of a chance to win, or probably a better than Jesus Road, who was already locked into the Derby, who didn't seem to have that speed. Jason told Ken Miller earlier this week that wasn't crazy about his workouts thus far at Churchill Downs.
Yeah, I think Jason's Road is one of those horses that you'll see probably try to get out to the front and then fade a little bit. It just seems to be the MO.
But I just know last week hanging out there, they seemed really confident in Cyclone Mischief if he could get into the race. So he's here. So what do you want to
Well, I do. My last tip that I got from Churchill is my uncle said there is a ton of buzz on the backside of the track, and this is where I'm going to throw everybody off on the 7-horse Reincarnate.
Really?
So here's the way I look at that when we talk about betting. He's 50-1 right now. What does it hurt to play that horse? A $2 bet to win, place, or show. $6 for that horse to finish in the top 3 at 50-1. That's where you kind of like can start having fun. I know we talked about Tapatrace. I don't think we can discredit the 6-horse Kingsbarns. It's a 12-1. The horse has never lost. But again, we talk about the quality of competition. When we were talking about Disarm and who it's raced. Reincarnate, I don't believe, Kingsbarn has not lost a race. But it's been like 3 or 4 races only. So I think the quality of races that it has had, the 6-horse would be a little bit. Yeah, let's see what they do. Well, Louisiana Derby. Kingsbarn won that one over Disarm and Jace's Road.
The last point, and then we got to go. I have a meeting I've got to get to, but I think one of the really interesting parts of this one is all the scratches, which we've kind of covered. It's kind of just thrown off all the early week analysis. But 2 is this point system to get into the Derby. I just think it's really interesting now, Josh, compared to when did they start this current system to get into the Derby? It was,
oh man, I got to say over 10 years ago.
Yeah, but it wasn't much more than a decade ago, and I've been reading it, and it just feels like, I don't know, like if it's not Forte, Tapit, or Angel, like it really could be anybody. I just
2012 is what it looks like.
Feels like it just is like ripe for long shots right now. If you're not one of those like great elite horses, we saw this last year. The winner gets in the day before. My big horse racing win, which this is like I bet on Country House to win. That was the only ticket I had. It's the only ticket I had that year. I had like a 70-1 $10 bet on Country House when he won the Derby. He actually got second.
Buying a nice dinner.
So lucky. Like it was. I had talked to you. Remember, we had gone over this, and you gave me great advice. Luch was giving me great advice. He's like, I think it's a long shot year. So I was like, all right, I'll take the longest odds. I'll put $10 on it. I'm not gonna worry about it.
I always will take like $2 to $5 and throw it on the longest horse just to win, because you never know when that's going to happen. And you're like, it's a couple bucks. But again, to your point, the point system started in 2012, and since then, you've seen the favorite be right in the mix. I mean, last year it was Epicenter, didn't win, yeah. But Epicenter was on the board.
That was an Abba. That was an Abba. What do you call it when it's the sire is an Abba? It's a
offspring.
Yes,
I like it.
Epicenter's dad is an Abba stud. I don't know, stallion, whatever. I get all your horse terms mixed up.
I like it.
You want to talk about? I can talk about like chassis and dirt car racing. Like, oh yeah, he's running the Longhorn. Oh,
that's like me saying like, hey, Chris, you want to talk hockey pucks?
Excuse me.
Want to talk NHL Stanley Cup playoffs? I know we got to go, but I will tell you, you can.
Who's your 7? Give us your 7.
Okay, here's my top 7. You ready? I've got the 5-horse Tapit Trice.
Yep, me too.
I'm literally 5, 6, 7, 8. So Tapit Trice, Kingsbarns, Reincarnate, the 8-horse Mage. I like 14, obviously. I like 15, and I like 22. Those are my top 7. I do have an additional note for 21 to potentially hit the board. That's the only other one. So I might, play with that a little bit. But what's crazy is that you could actually, I don't think people realize how exotic you can get with your bet. So you could be like, all right, I'm going to place a bet that literally is going to be like, I'm going to place a bet that Angel of Empire or Forte, 14 or 15 are going to finish first. Then I'm going to, as part of that bet, I'm going to say maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 could finish second. And then I'm going to say 22, 7, 8, 14 could finish third. You can literally pick and make it all of that. It wouldn't be a box, but you can pick races like that.
Yeah.
There's like a term called a wheel. You can look it up on Google. You can Google it. And then also, if people are concerned, like do a bet calculator. They're online. You can Google them, get them, and you can just type in your numbers and be like, all right, well, if I paid, $2 for a trifecta, $18 or whatever, right?
My top, I'm down to Forte, Tapit Trice, Angel of Empire. I wasn't really on King's Barnes, but you've kind of convinced me to give another look there. I have Mage and Disarm both on my list. The Reincarnate just based off of your tip, and then Cyclone Mischief. I will probably do a win play show on Jesus Road just because it's a local ownership.
And it's 50 to 1.
Yeah, might as well.
So why not?
Yeah. I know who the horse was named after, like all this stuff. So it's like, I want the ticket more than anything if it can, to put in the frame at the office, that type of a deal. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. I am going to do more on this because it threw me for a curve when more horses scratched in the last 12 hours.
4 scratches right now, and it's just like, come on. And
are you going to wait to put your bets in until we know more?
Yeah, I'll probably go about 3 o'clock.
Okay.
I'll probably bet about 3 o'clock. You're a couple hours to post time. Usually if something's shaken, it's done by then, unless you have an incident where, gosh, what was it last year or the year before where you had that horse buck off in the paddock and it that
was a Luch horse.
Yeah.
They got disqualified. That was 1,000 words.
In the paddock because I think it got hurt or
that was 1,000 words. It got disqualified.
Yeah. And so
if it turns over in the paddock, it's disqualified.
Yeah. And so now all of a sudden, because of risk of injury, now all of a sudden, anybody that had played that horse, you're 40 minutes from post time, and any bet with that horse is now done.
Yeah.
So it's just wait, because you know what? Like, God forbid you could get, to 3 o'clock and Angel of Empire gets scratched, and all of a sudden your whole game plan is ruined. Sorry.
Yeah.
My luck, it'll be the 6 horse.
Well, you and me are going to stay in touch.
Yeah.
And maybe I will tweet out our final plays tomorrow.
Giddy up. Text me in the morning. We'll see how we're feeling about life.
This. Yeah, I'm gonna be rocking and rolling. Tomorrow's gonna be fun. I've got Little League softball in the morning. I'm a coach.
All right, you can be me. I'm sour. Yeah, family wedding. Who gets married on Derby Saturday? Are you kidding me?
This has to be on the wife's side.
Absolutely.
Yeah, nobody on your side would get married on Derby Saturday.
No. And when we got the invite in September, my wife goes, "Oh,
unbelievable."
May 6th. And I go, "That's Derby Saturday." She goes, "Who would know that?" I go, "Who do you think would know? And who gets married on Derby Saturday?" You can't do that.
That's like in my world when you get married on the Cyhawk football game. I'm not going. I'm sorry.
Exactly. Well, I'll be the guy that's apparently got to go to the restroom at 5:50.
Although I did last year. It was a Friday wedding. It was the Friday before the Cyhawk game, and it was in North Carolina. It was my niece, not my niece, my cousin, and she asked me to officiate it. So we actually did, and then we had a big pool party watching the game. So it was fun.
Great.
Honestly, I'm soured on the Cyhawk game. It's just not that fun anymore. It's just too toxic for me. I'm not that into it. It's not fun.
I went to University of Kentucky, so to me, I'm impartial.
Yeah, but I would guess like a Louisville, Kentucky basketball game would be pretty toxic. They're just so little brother to you that you don't even worry about it. Boy, Patino, though, that had to be right up here.
Kentucky's like Globo Gym, right? We just look at Louisville and say we're better than you, and we know it.
You're just an elitist Kentucky fan. Is Calipari there for a long term? I thought he was for sure going to go to Texas.
You know what? I was really hoping that wouldn't happen, and I'm happy it hasn't. He's just rattling cages there. I mean, remember he had the stuff with Mark Stoops before the season started where he was like, hey, we need a world-class basketball facility, which I believe they do. They should have one of the top ones. They don't yet, but I think they'll get it. He's going to get everything he wants there. He practically does anyway. But he's got to produce. I mean, it's been 12 years since he won a title, which is crazy to say it that way.
All right, brother. We got to do this more often. Love you, man.
Thanks for having me.
He's Josh Fisher.
Great to see you.
Great to see you, brother. And enjoy the Derby. I hope this taught you guys a little bit about. Hey, look at this guy in the background. Holy crap! It's like a ghost appeared. It's Ross. Hey, say hi to everybody on Iowa Everywhere, Ross.
Hey, Iowa Everywhere. I love you guys. Keep up the great work.
When are we gonna do our thing, our reunion show?
Pretty soon, okay, buddy. All
right.
Yeah, I can cut loose here in maybe a couple weeks, okay?
You stay still there. I'm going to end this broadcast, and then we'll talk. All right. Thanks to Josh Fisher. Get your Derby bets in. Have a little fun. Best of luck tomorrow, everybody.